Hello people, in today's video I'm going to give you the ultimate step-by-step guide to starting an Airbnb business. Hi guys, I'm Jim and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to cover the 5 main steps to starting an Airbnb business. Step 1 is background research, Step 2 is setting up your business in the right way, Step 3 is the acquisition of properties, Step 4 is the setup of the property and the background systems, and finally Step 5 is making sure you get good reviews and how to get longer bookings. So let's jump right into it. First up, I'm going to talk about the background research you need to do before you start your Airbnb business. If you've seen my video, everything you need to know to start an Airbnb business, then this first section will sound familiar, so feel free to jump to Step 2. So where are you going to operate your Airbnb business from? This is the most important decision you will make as it will affect your target market and how much money you could potentially make. I recommend that you pick a gold-mined area of around a 40-minute drive away from where you live. This is so in case anything happens you can quickly hop over and sort out any issues. And like anything in life, stuff will go wrong with running an Airbnb business, so get ready for it. You want to do research into the gold-mined area you are picking. A good list of attractions and amenities to look for are the following: building sites, city centres, tourist locations, train stations, big business/industry, airports, sports or music venues, conference centres, hospitals and universities. If you know the area, chances are you already know this information, but it's a useful exercise to write them down in a list so you can see them all. This will help when you are looking at your target market. Finding your target market is 100% driven by the area, so you need to make sure you have a clear picture in your mind who you want to stay in your Airbnb. Now of course, you will not get these guests all of the time, but it will help you and the guests if you have a clear idea who the target market is. There are broadly 3 main groups when it comes to target market: corporate or business guests, contractor guests, and leisure guests. Now, all of these 3 groups will have different needs and expectations. Business guests will typically stay with you between Monday and Friday while they are working away in a different city or area. Depending on the type of business guest, they may have a higher expectation of quality of accommodation, so this will have to inform your decision when you are setting up the unit. Whereas contractor guests typically are driven by cost per person per night, so they want a good balance between nice accommodation and a good price. These type of guests can be really profitable as they may stay with you for a 10-week block and you'll be able to lower your changeover fees, but I'll talk more around this in Step 4 where I talk about the unit setup and systems. Finally, leisure guests might be families or couples who are coming away for the weekend, and they might like nice little touches around the property to make their stay all the more special. I hope it is clear now why you let your area drive the decision on your target market. You're not going to target contractors in an area where there are lots of tourist activity. That's not to say you will not get them, as there might be big jobs in the area from time to time, but you want to stack the deck in your favour and target the market which is most likely to spend the most time in your area. All this work around area and target markets will help you inform what type of property you want to target for your Airbnb business. For example, a standard terraced house will work well for contractor market, but might not work for the leisure guest. They might want a nice converted barn type of property, so much of this will depend on your area and market. So have this at the front of your mind when you're making these decisions. Something which will help massively with this is to research your competitors in your area. You'll be able to see what type of properties they are using and how they have it laid out. Fingers crossed, you should be able to tell which target market they are targeting by looking at the property, and it should not be a million miles away from the type of guest you are looking to attract. At this stage, it is worth seeing what sort of pricing your competitors are charging by looking at different dates and length of stays. I would also make sure you see if they are charging more for the weekend. I would also look at their calendar on Airbnb and see how booked up they are. This could be due to a lack of demand or might be seasonality, which is something you will have to factor in down the line when it comes to your pricing. You might have to charge more in the summertime to cover your costs in the winter. When looking at competitors' properties, I like to ask myself the following questions: what do they do well? What do they do badly? I also like to read as many reviews as I can to see what the guests are saying. If you are serious, I'd recommend about booking a few nights with them and seeing how they communicate with you, what their service is like, and what their Airbnb is like to stay in. This will give you so much information for when you come to set up your unit, and you will have a good measure of your competition. If you want more detail about demand for your area and pricing, I would recommend using a website called AirDNA. You have to pay for their service, but it's worth doing it up front to make sure that setting up your Airbnb is a viable business. You'll get information about average occupancy rates and how much people charge in your area, so this is a fantastic yardstick to go off. When it comes to pricing, you want to make sure that you're always breaking even at 50% occupancy in the month and making a good profit at 75% occupancy. Your pricing is something you'll always be looking at. At the start, you might offer a lower price to get people in the property and get some reviews on the board. and over time you might slowly increase them to drive up your profits. Or you might offer a good discount for longer bookings. This is something which you will always need to be tweaking during the year. But when you have a ballpark figure of how much you can charge per night in the week and at the weekend, ideally you want to charge a bit more at the weekend. You can do some rough numbers about how the unit will perform. The main costs to consider will be the following: company setup and accounting, insurances, furniture and soft furnishings, cleaning and linen, laundry, gas, electricity, water, broadband, TV license, and council tax or business rates. Now, some of these costs are upfront costs and some are monthly costs, so you want to work out how much you'll be making each month. Remember, to break even you want 50% occupancy, and to make a good profit you want 75% occupancy. Then you want to work out how long it will take to pay back your initial investment. At this stage, you'll not have firm numbers, but you want to get quotes for all of the above. You could even look at your competitors and look at what they offer and reverse engineer how much their stuff has cost them by looking online. Cleaning and linen, it is worth ringing a few local businesses to you to get some quotes. You want to factor in 2 changeovers a week. All a changeover is when the cleaning team comes in and cleans the house, changes the sheets and washes all the used items. I think it is safe to account for 2 of these a week at this stage. You also want to spend some time thinking about the maximum number of guests you want to stay at your property. Will you have single beds in each room and a sofa bed downstairs? Personally, I like having single beds which can be pushed together to make a double. This gives you flexibility. If guests want to have a double bed, then this is something you could ask them when they book with you. Also, it might be worth having a sofa bed in the property so you can get more guests to stay over. This will be useful for the contractor market as they want the price per person per night to be at its lowest. I would use your competition as a guide in terms of what they have charged for extra guests. The pricing model might be something like a basic price for 2 guests, and then for every guest on top you are £10 per night. Researching your competition here is vital to make sure you're on the right price range for the area. Now, you want to do all this before you can even properly start the business, as no one wants to go into something not prepared and find out down the line that the business is going to lose them loads of money. Next up, we're going to talk about how to set up your business. Now, this will be based on my experience, which is only in the UK. So my advice for anyone is to speak with an accountant, as everyone's situation is different, so it could vary from person to person. But the setup which is most likely to work for most people is to have 2 separate limited companies, one for owning the asset and one for operating the asset. Now, this will depend on how you're going to acquire the properties, which I'm going to talk through next. But if you're going to own the property you'll be operating as an Airbnb unit, then you want that to be in one company and you want a separate company to operate the property. This will help with your tax, as the operating company is hopefully going to have a decent revenue, so you want that to be taxed in its own company. But I'm not an accountant, so my best advice here is to go and speak to one of them. If you're not going to own the property, then all you need is an operating limited company, which is pretty simple. Step 3 involves how we're going to acquire properties for our Airbnb business. In simple terms, this is how an Airbnb business works. When you own or control a property, you'll pay rent or a mortgage each month and then pay for everything else to run the property. So let's say all your costs are £1,500 a month, which will be your rent, utilities, insurance, Wi-Fi and TV packages. And let's say you have a booking for 1 month and you're cleaning the property once a week with a change of linen, and this costs you £35 a week per changeover, meaning it costs you £140 a month, so you're all in for £1,640. After all the groundwork, you can see you can charge an average of £130 a night for your property, and you have that nice long month booking, so your turnover will be £3,900, meaning after all your expenses you will have made £2,260. Now, these are rough numbers and some other costs need to be considered, like Airbnb fees, but you can start to see how you can make some serious money on Airbnb. So now I'm going to talk about the most common ways for beginners to acquire properties. The most obvious way is if you own the property outright. Now, this could have been a cash purchase or using a mortgage, but you need to make sure you have a holiday let mortgage for doing Airbnb. You cannot do this with a normal buy-to-let mortgage, as the product does not cover you for renting the property out by the night. If you're in the lucky position where you already have a few buy-to-let properties, then you could convert some of these properties across and start doing Airbnb with them. Obviously, doing any of these involves you needing a fair bit of cash in order to purchase the property outright or with a mortgage with a 25% deposit. So what is the cheapest way to get an Airbnb with as little money as possible? The way to do this is via a rent-to-rent agreement. All this is a corporate let agreement between the landlord or letting agent with your company to repurpose the property for guests who stay on a short-term basis. The reason why this is a cheaper entry point is because you do not have to spend any money to purchase the property. All you would pay for is to furnish the property. The best way to think about this is if someone could pick up a house, shake it, then everything which would fall out would be your responsibility. Although this is certainly a cheaper entry point, be aware you still need money to kit out the property. Like I spoke about earlier, the amount you will spend depend on the type of guest who will be staying in your property. So how do you find these deals? Well, you can go directly to the landlord and come to an agreement, or you can go via a letting agent. The best way to find landlords for doing rent-to-rent deals is to get well known within your area. So make sure you attend networking events, whether that's online or in person, and join online communities and make sure people are aware you're looking to partner with landlords to do rent-to-rent deals. Within any business deal, you need to create a win-win situation. So let's break down some of the benefits for both parties. What is the landlord getting out of this agreement? Well, they could potentially get long-term income for their property. It makes sense that if this property works as an Airbnb unit, you're going to want to stick with it. They get their property maintained to a high standard. It's going to be within your best interest as the Airbnb operator to make sure the property is in good nick, as if it's not, it could lead to you getting negative reviews. The landlord does not have to worry about voids or evictions, as any voids is covered by your Airbnb business, not by the landlord. This would be different if you are managing the property for the landlord. If you had voids during a month, this will come out of the landlord's pocket, but in a rent-to-rent deal, it comes out of your pocket. Linking to this, the landlord is more likely to not have to chase the company doing a rent-to-rent deal for the rent each month. Now, nothing is guaranteed in business, but as this is a business relationship, the idea is that the business managing the unit will act in a more professional manner. This could include paying rent full and on time. Some of the benefits for you as an Airbnb operator is that you can set the unit up quickly. You will not have to go through conveyancing like when you purchase a normal property. So the process can happen quickly and you can have the unit operational within a couple of weeks. Linked with this is the fact you do not have to stump up the money to purchase the property. You are simply controlling and repurposing the property to operate on Airbnb. It is the lowest cost way of getting involved in Airbnb, as you only have to pay for the fit out of the property. Like previously mentioned, you can get rent-to-rent deals through letting agents. This is relatively simple once you know the type of property you're targeting. After you've nailed your target market, you can start looking on Rightmove to find a property to rent that fits the bill. It is worth booking a viewing for the property. However, I would recommend mentioning to them that you want to repurpose the property for clients who will be staying with you by the night. This is normally something that letting agents will have to run by the landlord, so it is 100% worth mentioning the benefits we spoke about before. Once you have viewed the house and seen if it's right for you and your business, you can start to negotiate the terms of the corporate tenancy. Now, you want to make sure that the agreement states that you'll be housing clients and not employees. It is also worth making sure you have a break clause in the contract, which means if the unit is not performing, you can hand back the property within a certain time period. It is also worth stating that any minor maintenance will be paid for by you. If you have to ring the letting agents every time something has gone wrong, you'll be waiting a while. And this is a business, so you want it sorted as soon as possible to give your clients the best possible stay. Around this stage, the letting agents will reference your limited company. Now, if you've just started the business, you will fail a credit check, as you have no history as operating and you will have to offer a personal guarantee for the agreement. It is also worth getting in writing that the landlord has the right mortgage product for operating the unit as an Airbnb unit. If the property is mortgage free, then you're golden, so you have nothing to worry about. Sometimes agents do not understand rent-to-rent deals, which is fine. It is often best to move on and try a different group of agents who understand the model. Now, I have operated a rent-to-rent Airbnb unit, and I have my own personal opinions on rent-to-rent. So please subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to make a video called What They Do Not Tell You About Rent-to-Rent Deals. So if you want to be the first to hear about this, please make sure you have notifications turned on. Finally, I'm going to talk about becoming an Airbnb management agent. Now, this is not a beginner strategy in my opinion, but it is something you can grow your business to once you have experience. And it's a good way to scale quickly. It involves you simply managing the property for the landlord. You act like a letting agent but for Airbnb. So you will market it on the platform and manage all guest stays, as well as background systems such as the cleaning of the property after people have stayed, which I'm going to break down in step 4. Normally you charge anywhere between 15 to 20% of revenue to manage the property. The owner of the property pays for all the costs and pays to kit the property out. You deal with everything relating to getting the guests in the property and managing them while they are there. In this situation, all of the risk sits with the owner of the property, but the potential is there for them to make lots of money, as they will have a higher revenue as you'll be charging by the night. But this is a nice blend of risk and reward for you as an operator, as you do not have to worry about paying rent and you can still make decent money. And once you have a few units, it should be easy to plug in some new properties to your systems. Now we move on to step 4, which involves you actually setting up your unit and creating the background systems. It is a lot of work to get to this stage, but that work will be super valuable now. When you've researched your competitors, you should know how their unit is set up. And this is where, if you've done an undercover operation and stayed in one of their units, you have learnt lots. The best piece of advice is to model the best units in your area. You want to be at least as good as them, but ideally better, as you want to stand out within your area. When it comes to configuring the property, you want those 2 magic words at the front of your mind: target market. I know I've mentioned it a lot, but it's critical to creating a good product and service. When it comes to the configuration, this could be something like having a dirty area for contractors to leave their tools and boots, or making sure the whole house is family friendly in case you have guests with young children. These types of touches will show the guests you have thought about them and will lead to repeat business. And most importantly, it will lead to good reviews, which will help you to get superhost status on Airbnb. This is something which guests can see when they book on the platform, and superhost means you are one of the top hosts on the platform. The criteria to become a superhost is as follows: complete at least 10 trips or 3 reservations that total at least 100 nights, maintained a 90% response rate or higher, maintain a 1% cancellation rate or lower, maintained a 4.8 overall rating. This is focused around giving the best service to the guests, so once you have your unit up and running, becoming a superhost should become one of your major focuses. Back to setting up your unit. In my opinion, you want to be subtle with your design of your unit. Some places do have wacky designs, and again, this will depend on your area and target market, but a nice, clean, fresh Airbnb unit is always something which will attract guests. The top tip is to make sure the first thing you order when you get the keys is the Wi-Fi, as it can take ages for the providers to pull their fingers out, so this should be top of the list on day one, as there is zero chance you can launch the unit without Wi-Fi. When it comes to getting furniture, there is loads of places online where you can look. The low end will be used stuff from Facebook Marketplace, or you can go with high-end designer stuff. This stuff might work if you have a property in the middle of Chelsea, so you need to make sure it suits your budget and target market. One of the most important things to think about is how the guests gain access to your property. Do you do a meet and greet and show them around, or do you pay someone to do that? Or do you fit a lockbox outside the house and send them a code 1 hour before check-in? I personally like the lockbox approach, as it does not involve you or anyone else having to go to the property. But there are advantages to having people go into the property, as you might be able to work out if they're going to end up having a massive rave in your Airbnb if you meet them. And stuff like this will happen. So another good tip is to install a Ring doorbell so you can monitor if 50 odd people are rocking up to your unit in the middle of the night. It is also worth thinking about giving the guests a welcome book, which gives them information on the property and local attractions and things like numbers for taxis and local places to eat. Also, you want to make sure that the guests have little touches like teas and coffees. If you are running a more bespoke Airbnb, you might have a special coffee machine with different types of coffee from your local area. Something like this could be a potential avenue of extra income, as you could sell local products to your guests. Next up, we're going to talk about background systems. This is the stuff which makes your business run smoothly, which no one else can see. The most important thing to any Airbnb business is making sure you nail your housekeeping. And how you manage this as a host is really going to be important. It is worth researching cleaning companies within your area early doors, as you want to make sure they are right for you. When having these conversations, make sure they understand the Airbnb model, and there is an expectation that your property needs to be at least hotel quality in terms of cleaning and linen. Some cleaning companies do deal with linen and some do not, so it's up to you which route you go down. It's probably easier to have the cleaning company deal with the linen. Normally the cleaning fee is passed on to the guest, but you need to make sure it is similar to the amount your competitors are charging at the start, otherwise people might go for the cheaper option. When it comes to housekeeping, I think the best way to deal with it is to have a checklist for the cleaner to go through every single time they enter the unit. So it will start with making sure that the guests have left the key in the lockbox, and it might end with them spraying some air freshener right before they leave so the guests walk into a nice smell. But you want every base covered in this case, so all beds changed and a full clean of the property. When you are making this checklist, it is worth meeting the cleaning team at the unit and go through what needs doing together and agreeing a price for a normal clean and a change of linen. There are many good apps you can use to integrate with cleaning companies, but something like WhatsApp is spot on and you'll not have to train them on it, so you can just ask for photos when they have finished the clean. You need to make sure that you leave your cleaning team enough time to fully clean the property, so you need to think about check-out and check-in times. You might say check-out by 11 o'clock in the morning and earliest check-in is 3 in the afternoon. You could offer late check-out and early check-in, but guests will have to pay extra, as you might have to get more cleaners in to get the clean done quicker. You need to make sure that the cleaning team is flexible when it comes to last minute bookings. You might get a booking last minute and need a clean after the last guest has checked out, so it's worth making sure they are flexible with dates and timings. Guest communication is key to running a successful Airbnb business. In fact, part of becoming a superhost is how quickly you reply back to guests, so it's vital you stay on top of this. You can communicate with guests all through Airbnb. I'd recommend touching bases with them after they've checked in and a few days later. And always make sure you ask them to leave you a good review if they have enjoyed their stay. Making sure you respond to every review is important as well. You can't just respond to the good ones, you need to respond to the bad ones as well. In terms of creating a system for this, you should look to hire a virtual assistant who could be the lead for guest communication. When you have one unit, it will not be too much work, but if you scale, looking after guests will become a full-time job. I know we are talking about just Airbnb in this video, but you do not want to just be on this platform. There are loads of travel platforms online now, like booking.com for example. You need to make sure your property is on as many of these platforms as possible. Now the best way to do this is by signing up to a channel manager. This is the hub for managing your whole business. You'll be able to manage your bookings and calendar as well as your pricing throughout the year. Normally they all synchronize with online travel platforms. They will be able to give you reports on how the business is performing, and most of them have some sort of guest communication element to them. Some of the most popular channel managers are the following: Cargo, Avivo, Guesty, New Book and Free to Book. It is worth doing your own research on these systems to see which one fits your budget. There are lots of moving parts with channel managers, so if you would like a video around them, please let me know in the comments. As if you're not going to be busy enough while all of this is going on, you want to go live on Airbnb. You need to make sure you are live before the unit is finished. You can input the date when the unit is available from, so make sure this date is when you've finished kitting out the property. The reason why you want to be visible on the platform as soon as possible is so you can build up interest. You might be able to get a few bookings while you're still setting up the unit. If you wait until everything was finished, it might be another few weeks before you can even get a booking. You need to pay for professional photos when everything is finished. Up until then, I would just use stock photos of an Airbnb unit, but make sure the guests are aware the unit is not finished and it will look similar but not the same as the photos. But when it is finished, getting professional photos will be one of the best investments you can make in your Airbnb business, as iPhone photos will not cut it, and you only have a small window to make a sale, so having great photos will help with this. Finally, step 5, which is making sure you get good ongoing reviews and how to get longer bookings. Once you've gotten to your groove and got your super host, you can start adding little touches for your guests, like boxes of chocolates or crates of beers when they arrive. This sort of thing goes down really well and will lead to more good reviews, which are the lifeblood of any Airbnb business. If you want them juicy longer term bookings we spoke about earlier, then there is a few things you can do. You can offer a discount for longer bookings on Airbnb, but the best way is to remarket to guests who have already stayed with you. Once you have their contact details, it is 100% worth ringing them up every so often and asking if they are working back in the area. You can offer them a discount code if they book for long with you, or if they recommend the booking to you, you could give them a 10% of the booking as a referral fee. This part of the process is about making a win-win for the guest and offering them a fantastic service which hopefully they will have if they've stayed with you before. Starting and running an Airbnb business has its challenges like any business, but can offer some really good returns for property investors. So I hope you've enjoyed my ultimate guide to starting an Airbnb business. It would massively help me out if you could subscribe to the channel below, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.